today we have an absolute mess of a Dynasty team. It's one
Yes.
of yours, and we are going to try and help you reshape this and get it back on track because this might be one of the worst teams we've seen ever submitted to this video series.
It's terrible.
And the person who submitted it, they know that it's not in a good place. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to try and help this team turn it around in Dynasty, advise some moves that they could make. Do us a favor, drop a like to show some support. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. And I want you to comment down below what moves this guy could make
Come on.
for his team. You know, we'll add some ideas. You can add some ideas. They can look at the comments and go from there.
Yeah.
Join our Discord with the link in the description if you want a chance to be a part of these Dynasty team breakdowns. Okay, so this is a team. It's from Pauly D27. Little context here. He says, all right, y'all want a team that's in shambles? Check out this beauty of a roster. This is a 12-team Superflex, half tight end premium, tiered PPR Dynasty League, which, by the way, if you don't know what a tiered league is, essentially 0.25 for receptions within 5 yards. And then from there, each reception, the longer it is, as far as yardage goes, the higher it is worth, if that makes sense. So like a 50-yard reception gives you more per reception than a 3-yard dump off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Decided to tear it down before the 2022 season. Recently traded the 23-101. We'll talk about this, Badake. Traded the 101 for the 105 and a 24 first. Not sure I love that. We'll talk about that. One. Also just traded the 109 and the 309 for Alexander Madison and a 24 first. Overall, though, this is a league where most people don't make many trades and they hoard draft picks. Would love ideas on how to spend all the draft capital I have and where I might be able, when might be a good time to cash in for vets, or is it better just to make picks? Thanks, guys. Y'all are the best. I would appreciate any help, and feel free to roast this dumpster fire of a team. And then he says, oh, I was offered Garrett Wilson in a 24 second for the 111 and a 24 first. Thoughts on that move? So let's just start from the beginning. Overall thoughts on this team. This is probably the worst team top to bottom that we've ever done on this show.
Yeah.
And
this is probably the team that has no flexibility. We feel like whether it's like there's no one even on this team that you can say, you know what, he could be something in a year or two if you just wait on it. Like, no.
When I was looking at this team, Badake, my instant thought was there's no way in hell I'm telling you to trade for vets. You are rebuilding. You are 100% trying to be awful right now.
100%.
You want a high draft capital next year.
Yeah, this is a minimum 2 to 3 year rebuild.
Yeah, at minimum. You're looking at a lot of work to get this team back where it needs to be. And you want to be as bad as possible right now so you can get there. Let's talk about the deal for the 101. Just based on what I've seen in the community, we have, hundreds of trades, thousands almost in our community each week that get submitted. Based off what we've seen for the 101, I think you could have gotten more, right?
Yeah.
You get the 105 and a 24 first. Where does that first end up being? If that 24 first is like the 108 and beyond, you definitely you lost that trade, I think.
Yeah.
We've seen people get a lot more for that. So I don't love that we already traded the 101. Again, just for everyone out there, don't trade your valuable rookie picks now. Trade them in April if you're going to move them when they're going to go for absolute ridiculous hauls. So I didn't love that deal personally.
Yeah, I didn't love the deal either. I was really hoping that even if it's not, if you don't have the 101, I was hoping that he would at least move back to the 102, 103 to try and get one of these quarterbacks based off of the team build so far. Because now you just put yourself outside of that window, and now you still have a window to get a quarterback. But I guess we can talk about that a little bit later when it comes down to this 105 pick.
Yeah, we will talk about that. Just a little tip for this league in general, in case this league wants to be a little bit more interesting. So you have a lot of bench spots. And for your starting lineup, I don't feel like you need that many bench spots. For example, Case Keenum shouldn't be rostered in any Dynasty league, but he's rostered here, right? I mean, you could probably say the same about Tyler Goodson, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just tells me your benches are too deep and your waiver wire is probably completely bare. So I would suggest taking away at least 4 bench spots. You still have 4 taxi spots there. So you have so many bench pieces.
Plenty.
Personally, I think there's too many benches here. It makes the waiver wire dead. That's just something I was going to suggest to the league. They don't have to do it. Just something I would suggest.
Yeah.
But
no, that
Fab is fun.
That is
it's a whole different part.
One thing I want to say right before we get into, I guess, each positional, I guess, advice we have. One thing I just want to say is, like, I think it's time to drop some people. I don't know if you wanted to get into that, and that's what's going to happen regardless. So I guess the first move I would do is start dropping these people. Tyler Goodson, I would say you can drop Caleb Huntley. Trey Sermon, I would drop personally. Craig Davis, Ty Johnson. I think that's all. In Case Keenum. Those are the guys that I will be dropping right here, right now, just to make room, because none of these guys are going to, at least we believe, aren't going to be fantasy relevant. Drop them. Start fresh. Kind of make your pathway and take notes as we start this video, because there's going to be a lot of things that we are going to be saying here.
So typically I would 100% agree. I just think, like I mentioned, because of how deep their benches are, you might not have to make some of those moves just yet. I agree with Tyler Goodson completely. You can drop him, no doubt. I agree. I would agree with Case Keenum as well. Craig Reynolds probably I would agree with. Everyone else I might just hold for now, just because of how deep the benches are.
That's fair. The only reason why I say that is because I think he has like 8 picks in this draft.
Yeah.
8 picks, and I think that was 8 players plus the players that he has to take off his taxi squad if he only has a 1-year taxi.
I had a couple ideas with those picks, so let's talk about it. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
As far as what you could do, quarterback position, we'll start there. Tua is the only valuable quarterback on this team. Is it a reach to say he's maybe the only valuable player on this team? Outside of David and Njoku, maybe. I mean, no disrespect to DPJ or Zay Jones, but like when you look at tiers of value, Tua is the only one that's somewhere worth a first round pick in value on the team. So you hold him. Would you agree?
I would agree. You have to hold, and wait and see.
I'm also down to hold Stidham and Corral, just because, again, with how large these benches are,
right.
There's just no reason to drop.
I think
those two guys.
I would say Stidham, I'm okay to drop. Corral, I would keep, just based off of we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, there's reports saying that the Panthers are in talks to have a contract extension with Sam Darnold, which sounds dumb, but I would say keep Corral, because maybe he'll get an opportunity the second half of the season. If they don't get a quarterback, that would be my thought process there. My
only pushback is we saw Jarrett Stidham look pretty good last year, and they don't have a quarterback right now. It could be worth holding on to him. I mean, if they drafted Anthony Richardson, they could start Stidham to start the year. So I personally would hold him.
Okay.
But I see what you're saying. So what you could do with the 105 is you could go get a Deshaun Watson type player. My issue with doing that is, one, you said no one in your league trades, so that's probably not going to happen. Secondly, I don't want to cash in right now for players who are going to help this team. So I don't love the idea of using these draft picks to go and get a quarterback right now, because all Deshaun Watson is going to do for me is make me slightly better, even though I'm a terrible team and I'm not competing. So personally, I don't want to spend any of these picks on going and buying quarterbacks in the market. I think you need to be a bad team. I think you need to be bad for a while. And hopefully, if this team looks a little better in 2024, then maybe we can look at using picks to get a quarterback that we like to complement Tua. But I want you to be bad this year. I want you to be absolutely awful. And I don't think adding a second quarterback is really going to help us achieve what we're wanting to do long term.
I definitely see the thought process there. I would definitely say there is I guess I bought another way to do that, of going for the younger quarterbacks, and maybe they're not as young as expected, because I did have a thought process saying, hey, maybe you can get Russell Wilson. Maybe you can do that on the really low.
I just don't think that makes any sense.
Exactly. It probably doesn't make sense. But what happens if you go for Kenny, right? What happens if you go for Daniel Jones, who are both really young, and if you believe in Daniel Jones, you believe in a Kenny, if you wanted to go that route, if you can even get a trade going in your league, like you said, it's really hard to trade. People like to hoard picks.
Yeah.
I think that is another option. But I would agree with you as well on the other side there, saying, you know what, I'm happy to keep my picks. I'm happy to start investing in a quarterback here, potentially even at the 105 if the draft capital is there for some of these guys.
Yeah. For me, I just don't want to add a quarterback here. We're awful. And the only thing, if I add a quarterback, we're just going to get potentially a worse draft pick next year. Whereas I have capital next year that I can play around with. So that's just my point of view. I'm not opposed to drafting like Anthony Richardson at the 105 if the draft capital and the landing spot is there, because we don't anticipate him being, in a top 12 guy, as a rookie. So yeah, personally, I think you hold here. That's just my opinion because we want to be bad.
But. Yeah, one thing I would say before we continue to the next position, are you drafting Anthony? If you have the option, Anthony Richardson probably fell in the second round, but JSN is there. We're taking JSN in that hopes, right? Just to make that clear.
Yeah. For Paul. Yeah, you're not taking a quarterback here if the draft capital is not there.
If the draft capital is not there.
Take best player available, yeah.
Perfect.
Running backs. There's not a single running back
literally
you can point to on this team that is going to even flex for someone on a competing team. Is Raheem Blackshear the best running back? I mean, maybe Alexander Madison, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if he does get that, I mean, he's a free agent, Maybe Craig Reynolds steps into it. No, not even, because
no way.
Still, then we see somebody stepping up there. There's no one here on this team that is of value.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think you're right. And so let's talk about ways we can potentially improve that. For me, at the 105, I would prefer Jackson Smith and Jigba or your wide receiver one in the class. Again, because we want to kind of compete in maybe 2 years. And not saying that Jahmyr Gibbs won't be as valuable in 2 years, but in 2 years, people are already going to be starting to have conversations about where's his value, whereas it's just 2 years into their careers, running backs and wide receivers are viewed differently and valued differently. So at the 105, I'm saying go best wide receiver available personally. Then I would say at the 111, Zach Charbonnet could make a lot of sense if you want to build around this running back room.
Exactly.
201 to 202, best running back available or best player available, right? Sean Tucker, Zach Evans, Kendre Miller, A-Chain, Tajay Spears, whatever you're thinking. Or if it's a tight end premium league, you could also look at like Michael Mayer. So with those picks, the 105 to the 202, I'm just thinking take the best player available because you need everything,
Yeah, and that's the same route I'm going. Take best player available. You need some of these running backs. You need some of that depth if they are there. One thing I would say, once again, I know you said this league doesn't trade often. You do have the 201, the 202. If you wanted to go the other route and go and somehow make a trade for somebody that is older, that's maybe in a weird place, which once again doesn't make sense, but just wanted to put that out there. What happens if you send a second-round pick for Joe or a Miles Sanders and you're believing in them to re-sign a Monty at the end of the second, right? All these players could be viable options if you believe that they can get the opportunity. Not something I would do. Just wanted to put that out there for Paulie.
Yeah, you're kind of doing the opposite of what you want to do this year, which would be tank. So I get it, but I would agree it's not probably the best move.
Yeah.
Is there any running backs on this team that you feel good about? I mean, like maybe Alexander Madison is a hold. I would say maybe he can get a spot in free agency. Every other running back, I would be fine to sell for a third or a fourth round pick in any class whatsoever.
I would say Madison and I would say Dion. Just based on what we saw last year.
Okay.
They got rid of Naeem. Dion kind of stepped in. Maybe they like how Dion produced last year. And what if they don't invest in another running back and JT does get hurt again? Dion is a guy that can step up, but not a guy. I'm happy to not even try and trade for a third or fourth. I'm happy just to wait and see what happens and then drop him if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say most people as well would look at these running backs and be like, I'd rather draft someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On to the wide receiver room. Again, from top to bottom, this is probably the worst positional groups, running backs and wide receivers that we've seen in a long time. Only thing I could say is there's two players I want to hold, Donovan Peoples-Jones and Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah.
Outside of those guys, everyone else is up for sale, including Zay Jones. I see he has a little tag on him any second. I don't know if you're getting a second for Zay Jones, though.
No, I don't think you are getting a second. I would put another name on this list here on this team would be David Bell. If they don't invest in another wide receiver in this draft, or if they do invest in another wide receiver and it's after the third round, David Bell does step into a really good role here. Maybe, but I think there is an opportunity for David Bell if they don't get somebody at least in the first 2 rounds, and he can step up. I'm waiting and seeing what happens there, but if you could get a good deal for David, sure, I'm happy to do that.
So looking at draft capital that you have, again, 105. For me, it would be JSN here. Mm-hmm. Whoever your wide receiver one is, I think that should be your target.
Agreed.
And then from the 111 to the 202,
so many options.
All three of those picks, I would be looking at, again, like I talked with the running backs, Charbonnet, Evans, Tucker, like whoever gets good draft capital. For the opposite side of that, with wide receivers, Jordan Addison, maybe Quentin if he falls, Zay Flowers, Kayshon Boutte, Josh Downs, maybe Michael Mayer because it's a tight end premium league. So. Agreed. Those would be how I would spin those picks. I have some specific advice about the 207 onwards, like those picks. Mm-hmm. That's why I've only given advice on the 105 to the 202. But do you have any other ideas for this wide receiver room?
No, I would agree there. It's kind of difficult to give advice if a league doesn't trade. But if you wanted to move the 111, the 201, or the 202. You could get some options. I mean, the 111 right now for Jahan Dotson, I think could be very interesting. But like you said, I don't know if people want to move someone like a Kadarius Toney in the early second rounds. Maybe could be something potentially. I think that might be a little bit too high though. But if you believe in somebody like him, you can do that. So many different options. You can go at the wide receiver position, but once again, really difficult if your league doesn't trade.
Sure. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the tight ends. I would say Njoku's a solid hold. Good year in a tight end premium league. Let's hope that he gets on the same page with Watson, but there's definitely a lot of reason to hold there. It's a very good tight end class. So I think from the 201 onwards, I mean, I think you could consider Dalton Kincaid from the 201 or from the 202, maybe Luke Musgrave you could get at the 207 to the 212.
Yeah.
In a tight end premium league, trying to take shots on those guys because they will have more value, rather than other positions if they hit. So, that's all I had for the tight ends. I had some ideas around these draft picks, but do you have any other ideas for these tight ends?
No, tight ends, I think you have a really good tight end here. The best thing you can do is either pivot or, once again, you can pivot and get a younger tight end, potentially, but how much younger can you get? I don't know. Yeah. I know that in a tight end premium as well, I doubt a Michael Mayer is going to fall to the 111, so he'll probably fall in the range of 105 to 108. And if in the weird way, you would get one of those quarterbacks. I'm going to say if one of those quarterbacks or if all those guys are off the board, but you'll be enough players to be there for the 105. I would consider Michael Mayer at the 111. That's what I would say. I would consider Michael Mayer at the 111.
Yeah, I mean, we do that in a non-tight end premium league, so I would agree.
And then trade away David Njoku to see what you can potentially get for him as well, especially in a league like this.
I would say hold Jake Ferguson because we could see him potentially step into a starting role if everything pans out well for him. Okay, I had some ideas around these draft picks.
Okay.
The draft picks I really want to keep, personally, is the 105 to the 202.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in this year's class. From the 207 to the 310, I have no problems moving away from these picks, and we'll see. Maybe you can move them as we get closer to the draft and your league gets a little more active. But if you can get mid-seconds in 24 for some of these, or just take a lottery shot in the second of a 24 class, I'm really open to doing that. So, I mean, what if you trade the 207 right now and it ends up being for someone's second and 24 next year, that could be the 205, right? I mean, you go down the line. If you trade the 212, maybe you can get the 210 in 2024. And the reason I say this is because with a team that's this bad, it's actually, how much worse can it get? Like, you can take a shot on, all right, so last year I traded my 208 the team I traded it to, I got their second round pick. They ended up being awful. And I actually have the 202 in next year's class, right? What's the worst case scenario here? You send away the 208 and ends up being the 210 in next year's class? Big deal, you know? So I think you have answers on exactly where these picks will be this year. Take some shots on next year if possible, and just kind of put yourself in that lottery of the second round. I would say the same thing for the third round as well with that 310. If anyone is willing to offer me a third round pick in 24, I'll give you my 310 this year, and let's see what happens next year. So that was just some things I suggested to do. I am not suggesting that next year's class is going to be better, but I do also love it. I just like this class. I might actually argue that it's even stronger than this class. So just a couple ideas, because you're going to draft a lot of people here. With the 105, 111, 201, 202, you're already drafting 4 players. Do you want to draft 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players? Or do you want the flexibility next year when hopefully we have, some more answers on this team to kind of make some more solidified moves to maybe, use those seconds to push deals over the line, to get quarterbacks or to get that running back that you really like, and kind of start to build out your roster fully. So, that was just something I was going to suggest. Of course, I'm not suggesting that you don't stick and pick from 207 to 212, because there's a lot of players you could drop on this roster. Right. But I'd be more than willing with a team like this to do a strategy like that, where I'm kind of just taking a lottery pick on the next round. Now, of course, you don't move the 201 and the 202 because you're guaranteed to have the best pick in this year's class. But again, the 207 onwards, take a shot. You have literally nothing to lose at this point. So that was just something I was going to suggest.
No, I think it's really good, because I did have things similar. What I was suggesting more in the trading, that once again, really difficult if you can't trade in the trading aspect, the 211, the 212. I mean, if I'm looking for wide receiver help, can you go out and get a Darnell Mooney? Can you go out and get an Alec Pierce? Do you take a shot on some of these guys, an Elijah Moore that's not the best, that's probably on a deep, do you go out and just say, you know what, I'd rather have some of these guys on a team that probably had a little bit of some sort of fantasy success, whether that was in a 5-game stretch or 6-game, whatever the case may be, then get one of these younger wide receivers that's going to take another 2-3 years to truly develop out. Sure. Unlike the Alec Pierce or Darnell Mooney's.
Not a bad idea.
The Rashad Batemans, all those guys, package them, try to get them. But it's just really difficult, once again, if you can't trade.
Yeah, agreed. This is a project. This is a 2, 3, maybe a longer year project. So hopefully this is a Dynasty team that's dedicated. I gave this an F. Team grade, I gave it an F.
An F?
I just look at it from top to bottom. Tua is the most valuable player on this team. Outside of that, there probably isn't a single player that you draft in the first 10 to 12 to 13 rounds of a Dynasty startup draft.
It's true. I gave it just a regular D, just because he has so much draft capital, and this team can look very different in 2 years' time.
But this is the type of draft capital we typically see with teams who have like 4 or 5 good pieces. And they're like, all right, now I got to figure out how to use these rookie picks.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. One thing before we close, you have 3 first-round 24 picks, right? Keep that. Don't trade that away. I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, what about your 24? They'll probably be in the middle of the season. What about a 24 for this, or 24 for a running back, a wide receiver? Maybe depending on the running back or wide receiver. But I would say come back and be like, hey, what do you think about this trade? And we will definitely help you. But I
would just say hold, honestly.
I was going to say continue to hold. But if someone's offering you like a Garrett Wilson or something for one of them first, or something else, whatever the case may be.
Well, he did say at the very beginning that he had an offer. What was it? He said, I was offered Garrett Wilson and a 24 second for the 111 and a 24 first.
I would be okay. I would be okay with that.
I personally,
I would be okay with that, but in the state of this team, it's also like, what's the point of having Garrett Wilson now if you can just get someone as high caliber in 2024? Potentially.
Garrett Wilson is already valued as a top 5 wide receiver. Is he? Is his value going to drastically skyrocket next year?
Right. Exactly.
He's already kind of valued high. So I just think you don't want good players on this team right now if we're doing what we want to do. So
makes sense.
That's it. Hopefully this is helpful. Let us know in the comments below if it is. Difficult team to navigate, but all I can say is it's going to take a lot of patience, and hopefully you're up for that patience. So do us a favor, guys, drop a like, show some support, subscribe if you like Dynasty content, and we will see you in the next video. All love.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/fantasylandfam.